other updates that I want to give our audience that aren't as fun. So remember that earthquake that I mentioned last episode? Yeah. It's not going well.
No, it's really not.
Over there. The death toll that I heard last was 36,000. And the WHO or the UN, I forget who, is saying that the death toll could go as high as 50,000. And it's horrifically bad in Syria. Like, the area in Syria that was worst affected, there is nothing in terms of response because it's where the rebels are. So what little care the Syrian government has for its people, which is not much, is not being extended to those people at all. And they are literally trying to dig themselves out with their hands.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a situation where we never know the true number of dead.
We will not. We absolutely will not. And I was listening to a really good podcast about it by a Syrian podcaster that I listen to. I will put that in the show notes. It's It Could Happen Here from Cool Zone Media for anyone who's following that ecosystem of podcasts. But there's a very, very good breakdown of what's happening in the context from a Syrian on there. And I will be putting that in the episode notes. But everyone who's hearing this and feeling paralyzed by it, please go donate resources to some organization in Syria, because it's just obnoxiously bad. Like, it's an earthquake, so it's bad, but like, there's the human disaster on top of that, which makes it so much worse. And it's just really bad. So I want to bum all of you out.
Right.
It's my job.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
And with that, I think that's all of my pre-show, pre-ramble. And we can get into the book if you want.
Yeah.
I guess that's a me reading, isn't it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and have you do that. So I'm trying to balance screen space on this little laptop screen so people can still see us, even if it's little versions of... I know.
Thank you for making that happen.
So yeah, this is chapter 34, The Hummingbird's Secret. Our symbol is the Flame of Tarvalin.
Because Aes Sedai shit?
That's kind of... Yeah, basically this is all about Aes Sedai sort of flexing power in the middle of formatting to get what they want. Cadsuane in particular. Yeah.
Cleaning up one Aes Sedai's mistake with a display of another Aes Sedai's power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is the penultimate chapter of Winter's Heart.
Yeah. We are joining Nyneave about 5 minutes from where the last chapter dropped us off. Just jumping back a couple minutes. Trying not to be too obvious about watching the alley beside the candle makers, Nyneave set the folded length of flat green braid back on the hawker's tray and slipped her hand inside her cloak to help hold it shut against the wind. It was a finer cloak than any on the people walking by, but plain enough that no one more than glanced at her in passing. They would if they saw her belt, though. Women who wore jewels did not frequent Blue Carp Street or buy from street peddlers. After standing there for her to finger every last bit of braid on the tray, the lean woman grimaced, but Nyneave had already bought 3 pieces of braid, 2 lengths of ribbon, and a packet of pins from hawkers, just for a reason to loiter. Pins were always useful, but she did not know what she was going to do with the rest. And then there's 3 paragraphs of a very intense description of what happens next, but I don't actually want to read all of it, but it is a very, very cool section of stuff that happens like immediately following that rather boring paragraph.
Nyneave stalled.
Yeah.
With a little, character study on this woman who sells, braids and pieces of rope and how she gets dragged along and her stuff gets knocked down. And
yeah, so she's selling notions, which are very expensive as far as sewing materials go. So you could sell them off of a tray and make good money at them. And Nyneave wants green braid. Green.
Right. Well, obviously.
Green.
Well, wait.
Yeah.
Why obviously? Because the green is for Lan, right? Because he likes her in green.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she's yellow.
Yeah, she favors green and blue because Lan likes them. And she's a little bit of a green at heart, even though she's a yellow. Like, she's a very fierce yellow. But yeah.
She does like to fight, yeah.
And I mean, pins are always useful and losable. But yeah, basically then a natural force, basically, it's like a debris flow comes plowing down the street and like washing away everything in its path. It, like, literally this contingent of soldiers marches through and scrapes people along the wall, ripping things off their bodies and out of their hands, and tramples a man to death.
That's what it seems like. I was going to ask, do you think he's dead?
Yeah, because Nyneave doesn't spare a single thought for going to help him. And if he was alive and twitching, she might at least think about being guilty she's not going to help him. But instead, he gets no more mention than that he vanishes under their feet. So, like, he has to be dead, right?
I guess trampling doesn't necessarily imply death, but are they riding horses, or are these just men
I think
walking?
they're on foot,
yeah,
but they're all armored up, and they are walking in or running in a coordinated group. And the word is trample. He uses the word trample. And Nyneave doesn't think about saving him, which I think is weird, but it's because she's worried about Lan, and it implies to me that he like really got smushed. I mean, I'm thinking of like crowd crushes and
right,
and yeah, literally crowd crushes. Basically, lots of crowd crushes throughout the last few decades that I've read about. Like, when people go down under a lot of people, like, if you can't breathe for very long, you die.
Yeah. And there's a difference between getting suffocated standing up, where you literally get squeezed to the point where you can't breathe and you suffocate, and falling and getting stepped on, because that causes a lot more trauma.
Yeah, I mean, and also like being run over by several armored boots, like, yeah, that's worse than people sort of stumbling over you. Like, that's being run over by, it's not horses, but it's like horses, but really light. It's really light horses.
Yes, those light horses they have that I wouldn't mind being stepped on by. No. It's just like if a miniature horse was trampling you. But of course, these men are responding to Nyneave channeling, right? Because they have basically GPS coordinates of like where this is going, and they are rushing to that location. And it is such a threat to the city that someone is channeling inside the city. They're literally willing to kill people on their way to figure out what's going on.
Which, like, that's a hell of a price to pay as the population. And you might just get trampled. And no one's raising a fuss. It's just normal. This is how the police force in this authoritarian state operates. Like,
it was just a man.
Oh God, you're right.
If it had been a woman,
second-class citizen. Oh God, you're so right. That's exactly what it is.
They wouldn't have trampled a woman.
Even Nyneave doesn't think about him twice. God. No, they will damage a woman's property.
Right.
But yeah, they won't trample her. And it's even men doing it, It's men trampling this man.
Suppressed minority is often
the uniform overrides everything. Yeah. Anyway.
I think we can stop right there on that one.
As Olivia and Cadsuane grab Nyneave and yoink her from about to being run into the situation and make a bad decision.
I love the way Cadsuane uses Olivia to threaten Nyneave. Like her little attack dog. She's like, don't move or my dog's going to get you. And Olivia's like, yeah, I will. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, such a bouncer, bodyguard, guard dog. Yeah, she's all that rolled into it because she's very loyal. She's very okay with being told what to do, right? She doesn't really want to strike out on her own except when she does. So if Cadsuane tells her to do something she kind of wants to do anyway, she is going to be on that like a bulldog. And
she's one of the only people with more power than Nyneave, more raw power than Nyneave, which is why Nyneave's kind of terrified of her. Plus, she's Sean-Chan.
Right. But that's why Cadsuane brings Olivia along, is because she's the only thing that can put Nyneave on a short leash.
Right. Even Cadsuane herself is like, because Cadsuane, doesn't want to do it herself. That would put her sort of in a weird position if she was the one who was yelling at Nyneave, right? That would work against her dignity. She needs somebody else to be the threatening presence. Plus,
it takes away time from what she needs to do.
Right.
And yeah, then we learned that Nyneave, in fact, just didn't think about it. She is, I didn't think, and then she gives a bunch of excuses, and it's like, well, the first 3 words are really all we need. That's actually all you need to say, because clearly you didn't think.
Well, and also remember, she channeled a little bit to brush Rand's face, and that didn't get a reaction. So there is some level of minor channeling that isn't going to be noticed. That level of channeling is far less than the amount of power it takes to lift 2 men up to a roof. Right? Like, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of power. Like, she used half of the well in one go, and the well is big, much bigger than Cadsuane's Hummingbird, which does the same thing. So that's not it's just Nyneave has no idea of the scale of power that she's using.
And she just blithely assumed that because she doesn't think it's going to matter, it's going to be fine. Like, Nyneave.
So Min says that Rand fell. That's how they know.
Yeah, she flinches with the impact of Rand actually falling. So that's why we know that we're like only jumping back about 5 minutes. Because basically the commotion starts, presumably that's about when Lan is like, we got to go. So then Nyneave is getting shoved against the wall and like pushed along like a rock in a stream and flood while they're running along the roof. Gets yoinked as Lan slips, and they are all walking away as the moon, or as the sun turning green line is uttered. And then Min flinches as they fall, and the ally rushes up to greet them.
I like the way Cadsuane later uses Nynaeve's channeling to threaten them.
I meant to do that. My eyes said I meant to do that. That was not an uncontrolled release of power.
We'll talk about that when we get there, but that's so good. There's a little bit of antagonism here between Min and Nyneave, because Min's basically like, hey, I told you not that this is a dumb, wool-headed thing for men to do. Why did you go along with it? Right? Why are you lifting them up on this roof? I don't understand why you're aiding and abetting their shenanigans.
Yeah, she's like, what are you, a man? Right. Which, like, I get where Min's coming from here. Like, that was a real flip of a coin if this was going to work. And everything is endangered now. Rand is in danger. Like, Min is justifiably angry, I think.
But I do feel like this is a bit of Nyneave coming full circle from the wisdom who's going to come down on anybody for trying shenanigans like this to kind of being in support of it and being this Aes Sedai who's like, yeah, I got to take risks. I got to go into traps, right? I got to, there's some things that are more important than following the rules.
Well, it is a growth. It is a big part of Nynaeve's growth arc that I do really like. That she goes from being this mindless enforcer of rules to a more thoughtful enforcer of rules. But this moment of growth is frustrating. And then Cadsuane says that the fact that Rand was intending to apologize to her will technically do for her bizarre line in the sand about how he needs to behave towards her. Like, it's enough of a gesture that she's willing to help, which I feel like is just so Cadsuane.
How else is she going to get the actual apology?
Right.
Like, there's no other way. Like, she's got to break him out, or else he'll never have the chance to apologize. So I feel like that's obviously not why she's breaking him out. She's breaking him out because he's the Dragon Reborn, and she can't afford to have him, return to Elida or imprisoned in Farmatting. But also, she's doing that mental gymnastics because it's like, well, I mean, how else am I going to get him to apologize? I got to break him out.
Yeah, she's a very proud woman, notwithstanding, and so mental gymnastics are going to be a thing she practices a lot. She has to move forward, never backward.
And that's just an Aes Sedai thing. I mean, the mental gymnastics to get around the 3 oaths that they use all the time, the half-truths, the
lying by omission, being the crudest of the options that they have at their disposal.
Even the ones who put themselves in danger so they can use the one power as a weapon, right? Like, it's all just getting around the oaths that you swore, and the mental gymnastics go along with that.
Yeah, maybe that's not good for a person's psyche and moral compass, and they should find a different solution. than magical legalese.
I mean, that's a whole debate as to whether the three oaths are what make Aes Sedai, right? Because there's a line here where Cadsuane says, I won't consider Nyneave Aes Sedai until she swears the three oaths.
Yep.
And that's because that's what makes them Aes Sedai. But that's also what makes them lying, conniving, mental gymnastic people who you can never really fully trust.
Yep.
And so it's really interesting that's because that's what sets them apart from the wise ones, from the Windfinders, from the kin. Those are all groups of women that use the one power, but no one mistrusts them or thinks they're dangerous.
Yep.
Because they don't have these three O's that they're, dancing around and manipulating people around. And like the amount of non-truth telling you have to do in order to hide the few things you want to hide when you can't tell even a simple lie is what leads to all of the Days de Mar that goes on in the White Tower.
Absolutely. Aes Sedai are blamed for inventing Deus de Mar, and I have no doubt that traces directly back to the interjection of the oaths into their society.
Right.
And the two societies that do have kind of mistrusted channelers, Shan-Chan and Shara, are both really problematic and scary and almost ruin everything. Like putting these kinds of controls and distrusts on the magic users, giving them the power to have that much control. Mm-hmm. It's all garbage. You need something more distributed and integrated into your community, like with the Aiel or the Sea Folk. One
of my least favorite Brandon Sanderson things is when Egwene is like, oh, you know what? Yeah, the three oaths are worth it. And I'm just like, what? Why? Yeah. She was clearly going to change that. There was clearly, I don't even think that was a Sanderson thing. I don't know why I said that. I think it was a Jordan thing, even earlier than that. I'm just like, why change her mind on that? Why not have her push for progressive changes? Why not have her say, look, there's all these successful groups of channelers out there. They don't have the three oaths. It's changing our lifestyle. It's doing all of these other things that aren't good for us. We should, it didn't stop the Black Ajah from taking over the White Tower.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it's because at the end of the day, you want to preserve the comfortable, ordered status quo that you're making an analogy for, and you don't actually want to admit that the structure of the society that you wrote does need to be changed, and that you do need to retreat to a far more indigenous and grounded and holistic way of organizing your society, and that maybe the great man of history and the great chain of being and a pyramidal structure to your entire society and a binary gender dynamic is in fact wrong.
The status is not quo, man. The status is not quo.
Yeah.
On that, do we want to switch to the Rand POV?
Oh, it hurts so good.
He's back in the box, right? This is the whole... I wish that they'd spent a little more time dealing with this on his psyche. He does, like, once he gets out, he, like, just kind of shakes it off and moves on. But this is that, like, echoing back to him being in the box, and it does make him harder and puts him on that road to being, nothing further can be done.
Yeah, this is awful because he literally turns to self-torture as a means of avoiding the PTSD that he's being put through. Mm-hmm. That is how bad the memories of the box are, that he will literally cling to the pain of the list as a way of distracting himself from how bad this is. Like, torture as a means of escape from torture or from trauma. This is good. This is excellent. This is super healthy.
So I'll do a read-in. Oh, should I just read this whole chunk?
I mean, I definitely highlighted a whole section in the middle because it's just amazing.
I'll just give it a read. I love getting into Rand's psyche.
Yeah, go for it. Because, just do it.
Rand woke in darkness and pain. Lying on his back, his gloves were gone, and he could feel a rough pallet beneath him. They had taken his boots, too. His gloves were gone. They knew who he was. Carefully, he sat up. His face felt bruised and every muscle in his body hurt as if he had been beaten, but nothing seemed to be broken. Standing slowly, he felt his way along the stone wall beside the pallet, reaching a corner almost immediately, and then a door covered with rough iron straps. In the darkness, his fingers traced a small flap, but he could not push it open. No hint of light seeped in around its edges. Inside his head, Lewis Theron began to pant. Rand moved on, feeling his way, the floor stones cold beneath his bare feet. The next corner came almost immediately, and then a third, where his toes struck something that rattled on the stoned floor. Keeping one hand on the wall, he bent and found a wooden bucket. He left it there and made himself complete the circuit, all the way back to the iron door. All the way. He was inside a black box 3 paces long and just over 2 paces wide. Raising one hand, he found the stone ceiling less than a foot above his head. "Closed in," Lewis Theron panted hoarsely. "It's the box again. When those women put us in the box, we have to get out," he howled. "We have to get out!" Ignoring the screaming voice in his head, Rand backed away from the door until he thought he was in the center of the cell, then lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the floor. He was as far from the walls as he could put himself, and in the dark he tried to imagine them further away, but it seemed that if he reached out, he would not have to straighten his arm fully to touch stone. He could feel himself trembling, as if it were someone else's body shaking uncontrollably. The walls seemed just beside him, the ceiling right over his head. He had to fight this, or he would be as mad as Lewis Theron by the time anyone came to let him out. They would have to let him out eventually, if only to hand him over to whoever Aleida sent. How many months for a message to reach Tarvalin and Aleida's emissaries to return? If there were sisters loyal to Aleida closer than Tarvalin, it might happen sooner. Horror added to his shudders as he realized he was hoping those sisters were closer, were in the city already so they could take him out of this box. "I will not surrender," he shouted. "I will be as hard as I need to be." In that confined space, his voice boomed like thunder. Moraine had died because he was not hard enough to do what had to be done. Her name always headed the list engraved on his brain. The woman who had died because of him. Moraine Damandred. Every name on that list brought anguish that made him forget the pains of his body, forget the stone walls just beyond his fingertips. Colover Saigon, who died because he had stripped her of everything she valued. Laia, maiden of the spear, of the Kosaida Charine, who died at his own hands because she followed him to Shadar Logoth. Jendulin, a maiden of the cold peak Miigoma, who died because she wanted the honor of guarding his door. He had to be hard. One by one, he summoned up the names on that long list, patiently forging his soul in the fires of pain. That was fun.
Excellent. Excellent. Ugh, it's so painful. He's like, "This hurts so much, I'll forget how much I hurt." Perfect.
That's really, yeah. I mean, he's back in the box and he's hurting himself to forget about the PTSD of the pain. I mean, I don't really know if there's anything else to say about that other than it's beautifully written, and it's clearly that Jordan felt that sort of panic and that sort of pain.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, that beautiful evocative writing is not coming from nowhere. Fortunately, all of his worries about Aleida are wrong because his crack team of women are
right.
coming to bust him out in just a few hours.
The Aes Sedai that are there is Cadsuane and her team of independent Aes Sedai would sort of be the designation for them.
Free agents?
The free agents that she's recruited. Because there was always that 1/3 that never picked a side, right?
Yeah, and that's who she collects from, more or less. Plus people who are borderline defectors from their own camps that have been drawn into Rand's camp and sort of forced into unalignment.
Right. Yeah, she's definitely taken her pick of Rand's Aes Sedai.
For sure.
Back to Cadsuane.
Preparation took longer than Cadsuane had hoped, largely because she had to impress on various people that a grand rescue in the best traditions of Gleeman's tales was out of the question. So it was night before she found herself walking along the lamplit corridors of the hall of the councils, walking sedately, not hurrying. Hurry, and people assumed that you were anxious, that they had the upper hand. If ever in her life she had needed to keep the upper hand from the start, it was tonight. So composed, so poised, absolutely pulling out all the stops on the inside.
Definitely. Terrified, probably.
Utterly. She's like, I have to upend a city in the hopes that I can roll a nat 20 on this situation. Like, it is, a lot is riding on how she manages to fuck shit up right now.
Right. And basically the outcome of the world, right? Because imagine Rand kept in the prison cell until Aleida came and got him and then paraded out for the last battle. That would be the end.
Yeah, no, no, it's so bad. It's so bad. So yeah, they're strutting along. We get our kind of, montage of people. We get, the line about
she will
not allow Nyneave the honor of the title of Aes Sedai until she's done the 3 outs. She also thinks it's a pity she could not have just brought the Ashaman. But even weak little Dagion was like, no, you don't get to take my Ashaman and strut around with him without me there. Like,
oh, okay. I wasn't getting the connection as to why the Aes Sedai were protesting that. And then I forgot that, of course, they're warders. So you don't get to just take our warders. That makes more sense. I was like, why do they care? I don't get it. And I was totally forgetting the connection between them. Okay. Yeah. So she's got her whole group of both women, 4 Aes Sedai and Nyneave and 3 Ashaman.
Yeah. She has quite the crack team, honestly. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot of people and they're all fiercely aligned behind her banner at this point, one way or another.
And if you think about it, this is the core of the team that goes on to protect Rand during the cleansing. They take on Forsaken. They take on, just all sorts of attacks. So this is a powerhouse of channelers. They're just in the worst possible place for channelers to be.
Right. But this is the penultimate event before they go into the boss battle of the cleansing. This is the final. Okay, everyone's here. We got to get our hero back. Okay, Now we're ready to go. But this is really getting us as the audience familiar with the strengths of everyone in the party now. Everyone who can channel, because the sea folk get left out of it, and they do have their part to play at some point. I forget when, because the sea folk.
Other than using the bowl during the last battle, do they really do anything else?
No. Rafe, fix it. Cadsuane thinks about how she did not tell Min what the cells are like because she knows how bad it's going to be for Rand because of what Min told her about.
Right.
Imprisonment. She's like, Min was very upset telling me about the box, and I know that Rand is effectively in a stone equivalent of that box, so I'm going to not bother Min with that detail.
So, and as Min's being like, he was stone before, he's iron now, all these comparisons between what's harder, which actually is kind of funny because I think stone is technically harder than iron, right?
Well, what rock are we talking about?
Yeah, well, okay. Not limestone, but probably.
Okay, you're thinking of whetstones and the fact that stones are used to sharpen steel, I'm assuming? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a useless fucking comparison. But the point of it is that she can feel Rand being quote unquote tortured, and she's like, what are they doing to him? And all they're doing is leaving him in a box where he is then torturing himself because a panic attack would be literally worse.
Right.
Slashes are so happening because I don't think he's actually managing to handle this very well at all. I will not surrender. He's shouting into the dark. I don't think he's taking this well. No,
he's not taking it well at all. We get a little bit of Cadsuane and her internal thoughts about Nyneave.
Yeah.
She had not been put through the lessons that what must be endured could be endured. Her healing ability was a little short of miraculous, but her ability with anything else is dismal, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, she's completely maxed out healing, and everything else is like not important. She literally says that in book 2, I think, that like nothing else matters in her lessons unless it's healing.
But then it's not like Nyneave is bad at everything else. Like, she's got enough power that she's picked up a lot of other things very quickly, and she's learned from Elaine, and she's learned from Egwene, and she's learned from Avienda. Like, I really do think that Nyneave, I think Cadsuane is being a little bit dismissive there and just being
so you're saying that Cadsuane is dismissing raw talent and learning from literal children her own age.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why she's not impressed by that.
Cadsuane's got some Forsaken attitude going on. These so-called Aes Sedai, these children. A little bit
She's been around long enough.
Yeah, I suppose. And she does have like god tier powers with all those Ter'angreal she's carrying around compared to some of the other channelers she's going up against.
Yeah. And I love her thoughts about Nyneave here too, because she sympathizes with Nyneave because she sees so much of herself in her, right? There's this excellent little bit of Cadsuane's own backstory wrapped in this. It was a lesson not everyone could learn in the tower. She herself, full of pride in her new shawl and her own strength, had been taught by a near toothless wilder at a farm in the heart of the Black Hills. That's like almost all of Cadsuane's backstory we get, and we get it buried in what is fundamentally a compliment to Nyneave. It's like, give it another 300 years and you might actually be impressive.
Right. And one thing to say about that toothless wilder, there is another line in Crossroads of Twilight that she says she got her paralysis net in the Black Hills from a woman named Norla. And so making the connection, we know the name of this toothless old wilder was Norla, who gave her the black belt. Now, I was doing some thinking on this. Norla, she must have been powerful, right? As a channeler for her to, school Cadsuane. Maybe not as powerful as Cadsuane, but certainly not a slouch.
Sure.
And she didn't swear the 3 oaths. So she doesn't have the effect of the oath rod. Mm-hmm. This was also in Cadsuane's youth when she met this toothless old wilder. So Cadsuane was 20 maybe at the time, right? 25 at the oldest.
Yeah, probably.
Because she learned really fast, right? She was out.
True.
Right? She was also a very young Aes Sedai when she got her shawl.
Oh, that's true. She wouldn't have been older than 30 no matter how much we stretch it.
So Cadsuane, being 400-ish years old, means she would have met Norla about 380 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And Norla, it was probably 600?
Because she would have been powerful as fuck and thus had the super extended lifespan.
Right, and she would have been close to the end of that super extended lifespan. Uh-huh. So I'm putting Norla's birth sometime around Arthur Hawkwing's day.
Dude.
And so I was trying to come up with some connection, maybe that she would have had Arthur Hawkwing or something, or but 1,000 years ago, there was actually technically there was a couple hundred years after Arthur Hawkwing before the beginning of the new calendar. So it's actually about 100 years after Arthur Hawkwing's day is what it ends up. But again, the math is pretty loose. So maybe, there's a good plus or minus 100 years in that age.
You know what? I'm going to yes and with this. This is why she has all of those trinkets, all of that stuff, is because she was born during the fall of an empire.
Right.
During the collapsing of Arthur Hawkwing's reign, there would have been infrastructure and collections of resources that fell apart, were not guarded, were dispersed in a way at that point. Somehow or other, that's how a bunch of Aes Sedai goodies ended up not with the Aes Sedai.
Right.
Somehow, because end of empire stuff.
Well, and also like the walls of Tarvalin were besieged, and I'm sure a bunch of Aes Sedai fled or were killed, and probably they had battle stuff on them, but maybe they weren't. They were carrying the Ter'angreal, but they weren't actually using them, so they didn't have their protection. Yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of ways in which something like that, or maybe a wilder, an Aes Sedai was dying, and she was given those. Norla was given the Ter'angreal because there was no one else who could channel around, Right,
totally. It was a strange time. People were dying, infrastructure's falling apart, systems are falling apart. Who's the king? Like, so on and so forth. And then she just kind of has that, and there's no one who's worthy until she's near the end of her life. And then this young Aes Sedai comes along thinking she's hot shit. And it's like finally a worthy successor for this kit that I've accumulated over the years.
But if Norla kicks her ass because she's got the kit. So even though she's, the other possibility is she could barely channel, and the kit is how she was able to humble Cadsuane so easily. And so maybe she was only 120.
I honestly love the idea that Cadsuane ended up getting her ass handed to her by an extremely weak channeler who was just super powered up on gear. I almost like that more. Even
I almost
though
like that more
the
too.
Long
Yeah,
lifespan and the history out of it, like the humbling element for Cadsuane is way more potential. So that might be better.
but we get so little detail about it, we could pretty much headcanon it either way.
Very true. Very true. We are workshopping it right now.
Right. But we do know is she was an old woman in Cadsuane's youth, which was at least 400 years ago, which means she was at least 500, born at least 500 years ago, if not, quite a bit more than that. And that she had access to these very powerful ter'angreal.
Yeah. And undoubtedly had a very cool set of adventures across her life to get to that place in the Black Hills where she met Cadsuane. Whenever that happened, it was a very exciting life, and you could make a whole series about it. He could be sitting for a D&D campaign. Anyway.
So she charges in on the council.
Yes. Breaks into their meeting.
Guess how many chairs, how many people are part of the council?
7.
Close. What's the other number Robert Jordan uses? 13. Stop it. So there are 13 carved 13. Chairs. Yeah. And of course, all women.
Mm-hmm. Near thrones, mind you. They're not queens. They're not rulers. They just have thrones. It's fine.
And so, Cadsuane buzz, do you know who you have? And like, well, we've got a guy who may have murdered 3 men. I assume they're talking about Rand there because it's the...
Lan. They're totally talking about Lan.
Oh, okay. Oh, man from the Borderlands. Duh. Right. Of course.
They're going to be able to pin the murders on him and slip Rand off to the side without, creating any issue in the public's eyes.
Got it. So they're pinning it on Lan so that they can keep Rand hidden.
Yeah.
Interesting that they do get Lan out as well. Cadsuane doesn't really demand the release of Lan, but she must get him as well because he's there with them during the cleansing. Yeah,
I'm assuming that she gets the Dragon Reborn and any attached personnel that may have been swept up along the way. Lan is inherently attached to Rand in terms of this encounter. I just sort of assumed that she's like, I'm Cadsuane and I get that man. And also, are you really going to tell me I don't get that one? No, you are not. Because, Lan's nothing to them. He's not an important bargaining chip. He's not worth holding on to. So, but yeah, they try to bluff past it and be like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, I have had it up to here. So we're not doing this.
I know you have the Dragon Reborn, and I'm willing to take him off your hands. And then they're like, no. She's like, it's honestly not an offer. It's a demand.
Yeah. And she says here, she had hoped that Varen's spade work would make them back away from this. And I don't know if it happened on recording or just in the server, but I was being called out on my confusion around, or my thinking that Varen was going off script before. This line proves that I was wrong. She was absolutely not going off script, even though Cadsuane looked frustrated with her earlier. That was all an act.
What was Varen doing again? Remind me.
She was talking about how Rowland Darksbane basically humbled the city and brought them to their knees, even though they have the Guardian. She was doing all this like weird historical scaremongering. Oh, okay. And Cadsuane says, I don't think they want to hear about that. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker and was like, yeah, Cadsuane doesn't want to hear about that. And
Cadsuane set that up. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I was like, no, that was I'm just too gullible.
Cadsuane and Varen are working together for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So this very much proves that Varen was trying to make them afraid of angering a man who would channel, so that way they wouldn't do this sort of thing. But it turns out they're just not that scared of a man who can channel. They're too complacent with their guardian.
And so she basically threatens them by saying, yeah, that channeling you detected, that's a flaw in your system. and anybody can do that, and then channeling herself.
Yep. First, she flexes the Ashaman, and then she flexes her well. She really escalates as slowly as she can towards that point.
But she does. It seems to imply that she seems to imply it's the Ashaman who are doing the channeling, though.
Yeah, she does. She sure does.
Which I always thought was weird, because can't the Guardian tell the difference between men channeling and women channeling?
Well, the Guardian can, but it's going to take them how many minutes to go down to the Guardian room and check? Like, this is all happening in the duration of the conversation. They're in the council decision room, not in the Guardian detector room.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, it's very, there's no time to double check the facts.
Right. But so she uses her little hummingbird, which is, we learn it's just like Nynaeve's belt. It holds a little bit of the one power. I sort of think of Nynaeve has a belt full of nectar, and Cadsuane has a little hummingbird that like sips at the nectar. So It's just like, it's a very small amount of one power, but it's enough.
Yeah, it's a lot like Varen's amber brooch. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot, but it's just enough to give you that edge that if you're really practiced with it, and Cadsuane thinks about how she's practiced with using it in a measured way, and Nynaeve is clearly, keeping her phone battery on maximum brightness at all times and burning the battery. Like, there's a technique to it, but Varen and Cadsuane both have just this little piece of jewelry that's very easy to overlook, but just gives them that little edge. Even Grandal does it with that little plain ring that she wears.
Yeah. Just a little bit extra power. So, okay, here's my question. When is Cadsuane using this little bit of power? Because, has she been using this in formatting? Because you think it would have been detected.
Yeah, no, I don't think she was using it in formatting.
Then where was she using it? Where was she in a place that she didn't have access to the one power and she was using a well? Steading?
A steading would make a lot of sense. Maybe it's also easier to use when you're tired. Like, it's less dangerous to use because you're not tapping into the whole power. You're just tapping into this little, snack. I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Why would you need something like that if you live in a world where channeling is really difficult to cut off? It could also be good for fine control.
Maybe. I thought maybe if she was shielded by a man in her fight, in a fight with them, that she would have been able to have a little bit of power to use to shield them back or, stab them or something to distract them.
Even just to shock them with the fact that she can still channel to maybe break their hold. Also, she's from Formatting.
Yeah.
This is not her first time fucking around in Formatting in her 400 years of life, I would hazard a guess.
Right. I mean, she knows what, Aleis is her name?
Yeah. I mean, obviously she's never used this trick in this way because it would be more wide knowledge, but who knows what, I mean, yeah, there was that whole, I don't have to correct any bad habits this time, I hope, line that we never get context on.
Sammy Nasai is pointing out that she would probably never be shielded because she's got Matt's medallion, basically.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right. She's just prepared for everything, and we know with the Aedam, she immediately puts it on and tries to escape from it. So it makes sense that she would put herself into steading and into shields, and then see how using this would work. That would be very in line with her character.
Mm-hmm. This little thing she does with the crown reminds me a lot of what Rand does with Colaver.
Yes.
Anything that is done can be undone, or anything that is undone can be done again, right?
Literally pulling a crown off of their head with the power.
Uh-huh.
It's such an echo of that exchange. And Cadsuane wasn't even there for that, was she?
Wasn't.
No.
That was long before Cadsuane showed up. She does not realize how much
she's echoing Rand.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, there's a little bit, they have a lot in common. That power, that arrogance, that taking a crown off of somebody's head and saying, no, you don't get to be the ruler. Sorry. I decide who rules this place, and it's not you, it's me.
Yeah. Yeah, Cadsuane is a lot like Nyneave and Rand, for sure.
Everybody's shocked, and then Nyneave picks up the coronet and puts it back on her head, but Dahmer Flynn is the one who says, I think it's prettier on your head. So by implication, the implication is that Dahmer is the one picking it up and putting it on there. But he doesn't have access to a well, so he doesn't have access to the one power, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd never really realized how deliberate it is, but it's clearly implied here that the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai are working together to create the impression that both genders are channeling, when in fact only one is.
Right.
I also love how Nyneave very nearly hits Aleis in the face with it. Like, Nyneave, always going to have that signature 2 rivers punch you in the face energy.
So it doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter where we are, but somewhere Nyneave is going to punch you in the face and you're going to like it. Somehow she figures that out. She even punched Lan in the face when he was rescuing her from drowning. True.
She didn't even mean to, but her essential Nynaeveness came through and made it happen anyway. And basically they say, all right, we understand you've got a nuke, you've got a gun to our head, and we have the nuke in the basement. But if we give you the nuke, will you take the gun away from our head? Pretty please. And then Cadsuane says, yes, that's all I actually wanted. And
right.
The chapter ends, and it's pretty cool.
And she feels bad about undercutting Aleis's power. Like she's like, you made me basically undercut the government of this place to rescue you. So she's kind of pissed at Rand about that. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't really care, right? Like, I don't think Cadsuane really cares. Rand certainly doesn't care.
So, Cadsuane does care because she thinks that Aleis is a good leader for the city and has for decades.
Right. So she doesn't want to undercut her, but she feels like she has to. Right.
So, but here's my question is, why does this have to play out the way it plays out? And why is that going to crater Aleis's political career?
Just because she sent off, she probably sent to the White Tower saying, I have him. Right. Like, I don't know. We don't really know that much about the internal politics of Farmatting all that well, other than probably with 13 members of the council, and they see her weakness, they are going to vote her down and to no longer be the leader. So she might lose her leadership of the council.
How is this weak? I guess is my question. How is this weak? Because all that happens is they collectively get bullied by powers beyond their control. Why is this on her?
You're the one who let the one power into our city, who let the flaw come out. We no longer have the protection of the Guardian that we have had our entire lives. Now it's proven to us there is a flaw in that protection, and it was under your leadership. I mean, as I've seen from politics, it doesn't have to be that person's fault for everyone to blame them because they were the leader at the time something bad happened.
That flaw has been there for centuries, and nothing Aleis did made it happen. Like, there's no action she took that made that flaw more or less likely to be exploited.
I know you watch politics. I know that,
I don't get real politics either. In my defense, I don't understand.
It's a bad thing that happened on our watch. And I think the undercutting of the Guardian's safeguards is going to absolutely ruin her political future.
I feel like I see that get said about politicians all the time, and then they go on to become the president. So
okay, well, we live in the worst reality, right? So
I feel like there's so many politicians that have these horrible scandals and then manage to continue to be in office and continue to fail upwards. And the only people for whom this logic ever seems to apply are people who are halfway decent.
Yeah.
Halfway, even just halfway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. Even the thing that doesn't make sense isn't happening. So it really doesn't make sense. Can we stop this ride? Can I get off? Can I get a refund? Is there a reboot on this thing?
It's a different turning of the wheel, Aradia, but I'm afraid we're pretty much stuck in this one.
Will, Aleis swallowed, but when she went on, her voice still cracked. Will it be sufficient if we release him to you? Whether she meant Cadsuane or the Ashaman was unclear, perhaps even to her. I think that it will, Cadsuane said calmly, and Aleis sagged like a stringless puppet. Shocked as they were by the display of channeling, questioning looks passed between the other councils. Eyes darted towards Aleis, faces firmed, nods were exchanged. Cadsuane drew a deep breath. She had promised the boy that whatever she did would be for his good, not the good of the tower or anyone else's. And now she had broken a good woman for his good. I am very sorry, Aleis, she said. You are building up a large account already, boy, she thought. And that is the end of us doing our normal coverage of Winter's Heart.
That's crazy. I mean, we still have that last chapter, but next episode is Tangents. Oh,
Winter's Tangents.
Winter's Tangents. Yeah, Winter's Tangents. Woo! We're not doing Tangents Winter or Tangents Heart. We can do Tangents Heart.
That's definitely Winter's Tangent, given that we're recording it in the winter.
Fair enough.
I mean, technically we're going to be recording it with someone who's in the summer. So I guess that argument's a little weak. But
we're in the winter. That counts.
Yeah, we're in the winter. We're the ones that matter. We're in real America.
Oh, nice. That's Fulgen. That's pretty. A great one.
Oh, I like that.
Do you see the little Rand in the corner behind the bars?
Yeah.
On the stone.
Poor
and the Hummingbird
Rand.
in the corner. Yeah, no, that's really good.
Nice.
And I think on that note, I actually still have a bunch of moving to do, so I'm going to see what else I can get done tonight.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that there's this, it's Valentine's Day.
Is it?
You have a partner.
Yeah, right.
So you should definitely make sure to feed her at the very least. Like,
we were going to do a fancy dinner.
Yeah, you should go make sure that's taken care of.
Right. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Really appreciate the live audience. And yeah, thanks for sticking with us through Winter's Heart.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we are recording.
My Audacity waveform is fucked.
Oh no, why?
I can tell, like, this muffled thing is happening to it.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's just...
So we're definitely using the Zoom backup recording, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm so mad. Why? Technology's shitting out on me. My camera and my microphone are both shitting out on me.
Luckily, we've got the backup lapel mic that you recently bought for video, so that seems to be working fine.
Yeah, thank goodness for buying more gear to indulge my hobby.
I moved since the last recording, so I'm actually in my new space. So if I sound weirdly echoey, it's because I'm actually sitting on the couch in my living room, and I just sort of have a temporary setup until I get the permanent setup all set up.
Congratulations on moving and clearly scrambling your brain on too much work.
It's amazing how much you work for the work week, and then you have 3 days to move, and you don't stop that entire time, and then it's back to work, and you go, oh my god, I don't think I have anything left to give some days. Yeah. So I'm actually taking a short break. I'm basically done. The only stuff left at the old house is the stuff that's just like things like a drawer full of junk and things that are scattered around the house. There's not really any boxes left. I need to like make a few assemble a few boxes and just throw all the stuff in the last like 5 boxes and clean all that up and do the cleanup. But for the most part, all the heavy stuff, all the big stuff, pretty much everything I need is at the new house. It's just all still not put away. So I tend to do that pretty quickly just because I can't stand having my stuff in boxes. So it's like something I can't really relax until I get it all done.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and we have a 2-week overlap in terms of windows, just from, we had to give 30 days notice and we had to give a move-in date of 2 weeks from when we signed the lease. So that leaves, 2 weeks of overlap that you can't really, that you have to pay for. So, but that makes the move nice and leisurely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's good to not have to rush these things. I have done both and I know which I prefer.
Yeah. Oh God, the rushing is, you just kill yourself trying to get everything done, and it's impossible to get everything packed in an orderly way. And yeah, it's just, it makes chaos.
Mm-hmm. Which moving is chaos anyway, but when you're in a rush, it's chaotic evil at that point.
Let's just say up until about an hour before recording, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it because I couldn't find a cord to connect my microphone to the computer. I had everything else set up, but I needed one cord and I had no idea where it was. It turns out it was still inside the stand that I usually hang the thing on. I had left it inside that, thinking, just when I set it back up, it'll be easy to plug back in. But I hadn't put it in the box of cords.
Too clever for your own good.
Too clever for my own good. So I just remembered last minute. I was like, that's where it is, and ran out to the garage and was able to grab it last minute. So yeah, no, definitely moving is chaos, and it's a shame we're not on Lord of Chaos, but at least I'm moving in Winter's Heart. I guess that works. Yeah.
Though we are past our midwinter point. We are into the second half of winter now, which is nice.
Well, we're into the basically last chapter of the book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We start the next book next month, which is also the month in which spring starts. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, the way it works, I guess the next chapter, obviously we're going to record tangents, but the next chapter we record will be the prologue of Crossroads of Twilight. And we're not doing any Winter's Heart chapters during Crossroads of Twilight prologue. I
wouldn't think so, no. It's the prologue. That would be weird.
That would be weird. But once we start with chapter 1, we'll start in with the various POVs. And the first one starts with Rand, beginning the process of cleansing the taint. And I'll have a lot to say about that. That'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be very exciting. But we have a little bit to get through before then.
Well, yeah, Rand's got to get out of Farmatting.
Yeah, he is in a situation. Other things for preamble. I have a cheapy art now. If you follow me on social media, you can see me no longer being an enigmatic geometry shape. I'm now a person, which is kind of cool. Took me months to get that, forever to get on the list, and then forever to go back and forth with the designs, then forever to stop sitting on the final design. It's been a long time, but I have an icon now, so I'm one of the cool kids. Just in time for Twitter to completely break.
Well, you're using it on Discord as well, and I'm sure there'll be other places for that to show up.
Yeah, for sure. So I now have a cool, official Watt community icon for myself, which is pretty fun. You don't have one yet, and you probably won't because you're still too cool for that. But I'm now the kind of cool that has it.
Right. No, I guess one of these days I should definitely, see if I can get on the list and get her to draw me one. It's just one of those things where, oh man, it doesn't feel like I deserve it,
What? What? No, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's fair. I have some internalized issues. No, I just think, she's busy and other people want them more and deserve them more. So I'm just not, inserting myself into the process.
Well, it's really hard to get on the list.
Exactly.
So if you just keep trying and failing, then you're worthy. Basically.
Okay. That's how that works.
But Timber definitely deserves one. So you could sort of photobomb into Timbers,
I suppose, yeah, Timber with me in the background, that would be acceptable.
Yeah. That seems reasonable. Other fun news, everyone should remember to go to WattCon for sure. I was participating in a meeting about WattCon planning last night, and I won't tell you anything, but cool people are doing cool stuff behind the scenes, and so you shouldn't miss out.
Will you tell me after we stop recording?
Yeah, because
Awesome.
you may be getting reached out to about some of the things.
Oh, okay. So
I'll have to talk to
I need
you,
to be warned. Oh no. Speaking of which, I have to buy my tickets as well and figure out. Do you have the dates off the top of your head?
It's mid-July. It's basically it's the second weekend of July, so not 4th of July weekend, but the one after that.
July 14th through 16th.
Columbus, Ohio. I do have one fun thing to put out there that I will also be putting in the show notes. There's a new WAT podcast coming out called WAT in Color, whose first episode is supposed to come out on the 22nd of this month, which I think is just a few days before or after when this episode will drop. So everyone should go check that out and make their first episode blow up just for shits and giggles, because that would be fun, right? It's 2 Black women doing a veteran first-time reader duo read-through, talk-through of the books. So if that is your kind of jam, you should definitely go check that out. And even if it's not, you should go make their first episode blow up just to make me happy. So
cool. Yeah.
WAT in Color.
WAT in Color. I will. Do they have like a pre-episode subscription thing?
Yes, they've got a little teaser, like 3-minute introduction to the thing that's published already. If you go look it up.
So yeah, the best way to support is generally go subscribe to that, and then when the first episode posts, it will automatically drop right into your feed for you to listen to.
Yeah, so everyone go do that and make me feel like a wizard for directing you all there, please.
Wizard. All right. Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?